Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Why is Bob Mueller asking for information on Roger Stone? And why did Roger Stone just join Sam Nunberg in speaking out? Nunberg told me he believes Mueller's building a case.
They're trying to set up a perjury case against Roger Stone, and I'm not going to have it. Roger's my mentor. Roger is like family to me, and I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. Roger's my mentor. Roger's like a father to me. I don't care. I'm not going to go into a grand jury for them to set up a case against Roger, whatever case it is, which could be ridiculous.
Now, those could be just theories of a stressed and loyal lieutenant. But then tonight, Stone, this longtime media strategist, effectively batted cleanup in his mentee's media tour and said this.
He is not speaking at my behest or my direction. I would certainly not have advised him to ignore or refuse a document production subpoena. I was pleased to read today that he's changed his mind about that.
Stone stressing he wants Nunberg to cooperate. But why do so many roads seem to lead to Roger Stone? The Trump advisor is one of 10 people on the subpoena, which I discussed, of course, last night. Of all the things Nunberg said, his insistence on defending Stone was striking. Roger Stone, a famous political operative, one of the closest advisors to Trump, a self-proclaimed provocateur and dirty trickster, he's long pushed the limits in politics and argued a kind of equivalence for gutter politics.
One man's dirty trick is another man's political civic action. Everything I do, everything I've ever done has been legal. But politics ain't beanbag, and losers don't legislate.
He was a loyal Nixon operative. He worked for Reagan's re-election. Then he ran that profitable political consulting firm with, you see it there, Paul Manafort. When Trump first flirted with running for president in 2000, Roger Stone was there. And he was there when Trump began running this time. And while he did leave that formal campaign, he was an outside ally, attacking opponents from Cruz to Clinton, organizing groups to try to help Trump at the convention, as well as the general election. But what's proven most controversial and of interest to Mueller was the support for Julian Assange.
First of all, I think Julian Assange is a hero. I think he's taking on the deep state, both Republican and Democrat. I expect you're going to see more from Mr. Assange, who, again, I think is a hero.
We have a mutual acquaintance who is a fine gentleman. I happen to be one who thinks that Assange is a hero.
Mueller probing whether that hero was involved in helping the Russians, Stone's own record raising those questions. Look at this. August 2016, Stone says he knew about key information against Clinton from an Assange intermediary. He also seemed to predict that hacking of Chairman John Podesta, saying, trust me, it'll be his time in the barrel. Assange's website, of course, WikiLeaks, released those emails. And then these messages from WikiLeaks to Stone leaked in The Atlantic. That was just last month. With this message, happy, we're now much more free to communicate after the election. Now, tonight, Stone disclaimed any advanced knowledge of Russian hacks.
my direct messages with Goosefer 2.0, if that's who it really is, come almost 6 weeks after the DNC emails had been published by WikiLeaks. So in order to collude in their hacking, which I had nothing whatsoever to do with, one would have needed a time machine.
After Trump's election, but before Mueller was appointed, I myself asked Roger Stone if he'd been to Russia and his view of WikiLeaks given what we've learned. Have you been to Russia?
I have never been to Russia. I have no contacts in Russia. I had no contact with any representatives of the Russian state or Russian intelligence. I had no knowledge, I had no contacts with people who might have been a go-between. Some say that Assange is publishing stolen documents. Well, the New York Times published the Pentagon Papers. The courts said it was legal to do so.
Lots of love for Assange. Now, the most benign explanation would be that maybe Stone's everywhere because he wants us to think he's everywhere.
The only thing I can think of worse than being talked about is not being talked about.
Self-promotion could be his best defense. But note what else Stone just told MSNBC within the last 2 hours. He hasn't been called in by Mueller as a witness, even as Mueller asks other people about Stone. And the question becomes, if you're the last one into court, is that because the prosecutor wants you to be the defendant?
It is Wednesday, the 7th of March of 2018, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Our daily special, folks, is Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Will no one rid me of this priest? No. It is merely an egg dish with hollandaise and lots of it. Well. Another day, another big news extravaganza. It just never ends. Boy, I had gray hair starting off in this endeavor, this adventure. Ugh. I hate to look at myself in the mirror now. I think I still have hair. It feels like it. Well, Stormy Daniels apparently doesn't have to adhere to that non-disclosure agreement. Wasn't signed. Well, that's what they say. But that really takes a bit of attention away from, other things like missing Russian professors who turn out to be, Russian spies. Yeah, we reported on that. And, that guy's gone totally missing. He's gone to ground. And Papadopoulos' now wife, no longer a fiance, they are now officially betrothed, said that she thought the guy was a slimy character, slimiest person that she had ever met. And, of course, in relative terms, still kind of young, but, she lives in Europe, and you know how that is. So, she was not surprised that he might or is a Russian asset. And so that's an interesting development. England, Britain itself, we reported this yesterday as well, is all a titter about this Russian national who was a former spy and poisoned along with his 33-year-old daughter. And it harkens to some other convenient, polonium poisonings. What was the one with the... I don't think the polonium poisoning was the one that was on the tip of an umbrella that somebody got jabbed and then, they withered away. Another Russian, by the way. That was a big story. And England has that kind of memory, so they're still raw from those well, not well-explained deaths, assassinations. And now this one. And let's remember, this guy was handing over Russian intelligence to MI6 during the time that Christopher Steele was running the Russian desk. So these are all convenient. It is very convenient, and we ought to be prepared. That's why I wonder how some witnesses in the Mueller probe are, the ones who've actually pled guilty ostensibly under house arrest. Oh yeah, go ahead and have a holiday in New York. Walk around, have fun. Don't leave the country. Yeah. Well, how about not leave this plane of existence? I don't know. Well, what's on the rest of the menu? Of course, Robert Mueller is saving Trump aide Roger Stone next to last. Because we know where he's going. And we know, he being Robert Mueller. So some people think Roger Stone is last. Well, no. I think Mueller's going to, make a little jump there. There will be some caught up in the wake between Roger Stone and one Donald Two Scoops Trump. Donnie Two Scoops. And there is a reason. Because, I was thinking about Roger Stone and the degradation of what we would consider a civilized moral code. He mentored under Nixon. This is all get back for Watergate. In their fevered, withered minds, they think because they have no moral structure, then the rest of the world has no moral structure, and it's dog eat dog, Lord of the Flies, and we better be the choir boys. So, a Roger Stone would see nothing wrong with colluding with the Russians. Because Nixon was colluding with the North Vietnamese and others, and, certainly from 1968. Reagan and his Iran-Contra debacle. They think because they do it all the time, they're just getting caught. Everybody does it, but they just, somehow, they're the only ones that get caught. So, yeah. We're colluding with the Russians? That's not colluding. That's doing business. It's just business. So Roger Stone is a conduit between, different times, but the same evil mindset. And evil is a qualitative statement there. So, take it with a grain of salt. You know what I mean. So, what's on the rest of the menu? Well, Trump's labor chief gets nailed for letting bosses steal workers' tips. And even though it's qualitative, I'll say that's damn evil, too. Right-wing grifter Milo Yiannopoulos is not returning ticket money after he canceled an event in Arizonastan because of death threats the police have no record of. And after a few critical articles, lawyer Kyle Bristow, the sword and shield of white supremacists, decides to quit the movement. Well, I guess that's good. After the break, we'll move to the chef's table for not only weather from around the world, but we're going to examine Europe's retaliation against America's heartland following Trump's trade war threats. And Oregon Governor Kate Brown defies the NRA by signing the nation's first new gun law since the school shooting in Parkland, Florida. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. If you go to netrootsradio.com and scroll to the bottom of the page there, of course, that is our homepage, you'll notice the chat room link on the rightish of the page. Kelly Lincoln, Roaring Girl, takes care of that, monitors it quite often through the day. To the leftish of the page are the contribute donate buttons, and that's how we pay our bills, and your generosity is very much appreciated. You can contact us as well as through the chat room link, but also follow us on @Netroots Radio on Twitter. And we're also on Facebook as Netroots Radio. And Tom takes care of the Twitter platform, I know. And I think Kelly takes care of the Facebook page somewhat. And you can follow me on Twitter @JusticePutnam, and please do. And I put up show notes and links every day, about 10 minutes before showtime, and on Daily Co's. And I'm found there as Justice Putnam. Podcasts of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy can be had by way of Spreaker, and you can also find my Sunday music show, Musique Sans Frontières, on Spreaker as well. And from there, podcasts of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, etc., as well as other Netroots Radio shows, emanate from there to tune in. Most everybody is on iTunes. I am. I still got to ask Kelly, will somebody help me? And Stitcher. Yeah, Stitcher's a good one. So, and wherever, fine podcasts can be found. And also, music on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is by Frances Livings, and I have the appropriate links for her resources for her work, and do check it out and buy a few. You can do that. And she performs also all over Southern California. And if you happen to be in town, if you don't already live there, do check her out. She plays, most every weekend and sometimes during the week, too. All right, she's great. Okay, so let's get on this. Bosses stealing workers' tips. Yep. Labor Secretary Alex Acosta wants to allow employers to rip off tipped workers. Yeah. And this is by Timothy Christopher out of Share Blue Media. Labor Secretary Alex Acosta tried to defend a rule that would allow restaurants to steal workers' tips, but New York Democratic Representative Rosa DeLauro would not let him get away with it. Now, hold on, son. During a House Appropriations Committee hearing, DeLauro demanded answers from Acosta about the rule that would rip off tipped workers. But after several minutes of evasion from Acosta, DeLauro was clearly fed up. The fact of the matter is that, in fact, employers will be allowed to pocket the tips of their employees, yes or no? And she's asking that. But when Acosta tried to demur again, DeLauro shot him down, so the answer is yes, they can pocket those tips. And so DeLauro asked whether the Labor Department had ever done a quantitative analysis of the rule, but Acosta again offered nothing but evasions, each prefaced with a condescending ranking member, DeLauro. Oh, I know my name, DeLauro responded. Was there an analysis conducted, yea or nay? Acosta took several more minutes to explain in equally condescending fashion that the answer was no. So DeLauro then leaned forward. So we have established that employers can pocket their employees' tips. We have also established there was no quantifiable analysis. And then she noted that the public had been denied the chance to comment on the full effects of the proposed tip-sharing rule. Finally, will you withdraw notice of the proposed rulemaking, yes or no? She asked. No. Acosta replied with a thin smile. This guy could be like Snidely Whiplash, tying, America down on the train tracks, just as the train's starting to come. No, save me. And Dudley Do-Right, I don't know. He's certainly underfunded and understaffed. In February, attorneys general from 17 states signed a letter to Acosta condemning the proposed rule change. And reports show that the Trump administration deliberately withheld data that showed billions of dollars in tips could be taken from workers. Kind of makes you think Trump hotels, Trump restaurants, a lot of tip workers, brought here from other countries. Right about the time you're going to pay them, you kick them out. You got to do something with the tips that have been accumulated. You certainly can't give it to them. They're just going to take it back to their shithole countries and, be irresponsible with it. Oh, these people. Okay. The proposed rule received almost 400,000 comments without the data that DeLauro had asked about. Time after time, the Trump administration has made clear that it stands with wealthy businesses over American workers. But Democrats like DeLauro will continue to hold them to account for it. They call it deconstructing the administrative state. Right, next up here in the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Smothered Benedict Wednesdays, is an article by, 10 Grain. And he often writes for Mock Paper Scissors, but I did extract this from Crooks and Liars. All right, 10 Grain. So, notable InfoWars supplement salesman Milo Yiannopoulos. He's playing fun with Yiannopoulos' last name. But Yiannopoulos had to cancel a speech in Scottsdale in the terrible sand kingdom of Arizonastan because of death threats to his person. So there was a urgent notice to Phoenix ticket holders, and his note said, Scottsdale police informed the promoter and venue for Friday night's A Night with Milo this evening that a credible death threat against my person has been received. So then Milo went on to blame violent left-wing tactics for the cancellation, but said that law enforcement in the ritzy Phoenix suburb of Scottsdale had determined security has been compromised, and the risk to my life is real. Consequently, Milo continued, the police have forbidden us from proceeding with this event. We have no recourse when police make a ruling of that sort. Oh, that's so terrible, 10 Grain goes on here. Why the left should never resort to the tactics of the... Wait, what's that you say, Scottsdale police? Scottsdale police said they never received word of any threats against Yiannopoulos. In fact, Sergeant Ben Hostler of the Scottsdale Police Department told Phoenix Talk radio station KTAR, that the department had only learned of the event earlier on Thursday, and by the time someone from the department reached out to the venue, the speech had been canceled. Well, Milo played Arizonastan suckers to the tune of $120 each. And if you click the link to the article, you will learn all the ways that the fascists in the terrible sand kingdom of Arizonistan were planning to rat F the police department and the alleged liberals who allegedly sent the death threats and so on. Milo, grifter Milo, you've done it again, and you found some suckers. Finishing up here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Smothered Benedict Wednesdays are our daily special. A daily special for each special day. That's how we do it here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. We're a white tablecloth establishment. Okay, come on. Well, this article finishing up here is by Casey Michelle out of Think Progress. It turns out the sword and shield for young white supremacists is not worth very much. Kyle Bristow, a lawyer who has been an outspoken legal advocate for white supremacists and a close associate of Richard Spencer, announced over the weekend that he'd no longer be affiliating with white supremacists. According to Bristow, he is leaving the Foundation for the Marketplace of Ideas, otherwise known as FMI, a group he founded in 2016 and one that, in his words, had, quote, aggressively established itself as the sword and shield of young white supremacists. You know, those terribly bigoted, bigotry is extended to the young white supremacists. They're so put upon these days. Well, after the Detroit Free Press dove into Bristow's background, including his past work as leader of the first college student organization to be listed as a hate group by the Southern Poverty Law Center, Bristow apparently could not stand the criticism. Well, he should embrace it. Come on. In a long, rambling statement, Bristow criticized media coverage of his work. How dare you find out about me? He wrote that journalists have published horrifically disparaging articles about me, which contain acerbic, offensive, juvenile, and regrettable statements I mostly made over a decade ago while I was in college. Well, you were old enough to know better, pal. Due to the unjustifiable vilification, Bristow announced that he would be withdrawing from politics. Sure. I don't know. Once a neo-Nazi white supremacist, always a neo-Nazi white supremacist. You don't really just, you can't just turn it off. Now, Bristow did not specify which bits of media coverage he took issue with, but he was never shy about his previous white supremacist leanings while working at FMI, which he claimed was a white supremacist version of the SPLC, and which included white supremacists like Spencer and Mike Enoch. As board members, the group published multiple guides for white supremacists, including for white supremacist guerrilla activists. One FMI post called on readers to hail Richard Spencer. Sieg Heil! Sieg Heil, Dick! And while he since deleted his Twitter feed, Bristow, according to the Internet Archive, because nothing disappears, nothing, had used his account to describe white supremacy as freedom for our people in a cause being heard around the world. In his work, he'd become the go-to attorney for a growing cast of racists, young and old. And that was the Southern Poverty Law Center. So, well, it's unclear how Bristow's ignominious resignation will affect Richard Spencer's future. But given that only a few dozen turned out for Spencer's recent appearance in Michigan, it's clear he has more issues than just losing allies, suddenly threatening his relevance. Well, I think that's what it is. Ego-driven, but a dangerous ego. Boy. Okay, let's go to our break, and we'll move everything back to the chef's table and meet up there. We'll go through the weather and then finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60 Second Science. I'm Christopher Intagliata. Many bats use a system similar to sonar to navigate in the dark. They send out high-frequency sound, sometimes as clicks, and get information about their surroundings by the timing and quality of the sound that bounces back. And just as turning up the light in a darkened room helps to illuminate the objects there, bats are known to turn up the intensity of their clicks when they have trouble detecting a target.
Now, bats have had, millions of years of evolution basically to sort of develop these mechanisms to dynamically adjust their missions.
Laura Toller, a neuroscientist at Durham University in the UK.
And what we were wondering is, well, do people do the same?
Because some people with impaired vision can indeed navigate using the echoes of finger snaps, hand claps, or mouth clicks. But it's not known how dynamic that ability is. So Toller and her team presented 8 expert echolocators with a challenge. Could they tell whether a small dinner plate-sized object was being held up about 3 feet from their head by clicking alone? You can try this at home, by the way, with a plate or a book.
And if you hold it very close to your face while you're speaking, you can notice that the sound that you hear really changes.
But move the plate 45 degrees to the side, then 90, then behind your head, and the task gets harder. But similar to the way bats do, the study subjects increased the number of clicks and their loudness as the object became harder to detect, perhaps as a way to amplify the weak sounds echoing back. The subjects still had trouble detecting the object a full 180 degrees behind them. They did only slightly better than chance. But they guessed correctly 80% of the time when the object was diagonally behind them, and nabbed nearly perfect scores when the disc was to the front or to the side. The results are in the Proceedings of the Royal Society B. Toller says the study gives echolocating learners a shortcut.
If you're not sure, make a couple more clicks and also make them louder.
To produce echoes that more accurately reflect the world. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
Welcome to 60-Second Civics, the daily podcast of the Center for Civic Education. I'm Mark Gage. With the rights of citizens of the United States come certain responsibilities. These can be grouped into 2 categories: personal responsibilities and civic responsibilities. Personal responsibilities are obligations that each person assumes individually. Examples include accepting the consequences of one's actions, adhering to moral principles, behaving in a civil manner, considering the rights and interests of others, supporting one's family, and taking care of oneself. Civic responsibilities are obligations that each person has to society. These include being informed about public issues, voting and deciding how to vote, keeping watch over political leaders and governmental agencies, and taking appropriate action if they do not follow constitutional principles. Other civic responsibilities are obeying the laws, participating in civic groups, paying taxes, respecting the rights of others, serving as a juror, and serving in the armed forces. Americans don't always agree on these responsibilities, but they must learn to use their rights responsibly. Fulfilling personal and civic responsibilities is a necessity in a self-governing, free, and just society. That's all for today's podcast. 60-Second Civics, where civic education only takes a minute.
This is Solidarity News on Radio Labour.
This is a Radio Labour special report recorded on Tuesday, March 6, 2018. I'm Mark Boulanger. One of the tools used by global unions to protect the rights of workers in worldwide supply chains is a global framework agreement. This is an agreement between a multinational corporation, such as a garment retailer, and a global union, such as Industrial. The agreement does not replace local bargaining. Instead, it binds corporations to respect basic workers' rights, including the right to join a union. One of the global unions which is negotiating these sorts of agreements is Industrial. Industrial represents 50 million workers in 140 countries, including many garment workers in the textile industries. A video produced by Industrial explains how global framework agreements work.
The global textile and garment industry continues to grow. Global brands and retailers place orders for billions of articles of clothing and shoes from factories in developing countries, which they sell in their stores all over the world. They have constantly changing specific demands for new styles, materials, and colors, but are not able to give any credible guarantees that the rights of the workers that make the clothes are respected, nor that they have living wages and decent working conditions. These multinational garment companies drive a sourcing model that constantly demands more product for lower prices by outsourcing their production to countries where working conditions are extremely precarious. Poverty, wages, excessive working hours, and repression are the reality for millions of garment workers today. Workers in garment factories, mostly women, need to overcome huge obstacles if they want to organize a union to defend their rights. Hostile employers, repressive laws, and governments that fail to protect workers in the hope of attracting foreign investment put downward pressure on wages and working conditions in the garment industry. But workers and unions all over the world are fighting back and changing the way that companies behave. Textile and garment unions are members of Industrial Global Union and are organizing globally to confront multinational companies and protect the rights of workers in supply chains. One of Industrial's key strategies to protect workers' rights is to sign global framework agreements with global brands and retailers. These agreements are very different from unilateral company codes of conduct, as they are negotiated between Industrial and the company. By signing a global framework agreement, the multinational brand commits to requiring their suppliers to comply with the core labor standards of the ILO, to respect the rights of workers to join trade unions and to bargain collectively, and to prevent discrimination, forced labor, and child labor. Suppliers are also required to ensure a safe and healthy workplace. Brands that sign global framework agreements give Industrial the names and locations of the factories where their clothes are made. Local unions can use this information to contact workers in these factories and make sure that the standards in the agreement are being respected. The agreements can require suppliers to treat unions positively and to stay neutral when their workers are choosing whether to join a union. Global agreements include procedures for dispute resolution and mechanisms for regular dialogue between unions and the company at national and global levels. Global framework agreements strengthen the link between the sourcing practices of the global brands and the rights of the workers who make their clothes. Now, garment workers and their unions can engage directly with the companies that have real power over their wages and working conditions through genuine supply chain industrial relations. It is possible for the clothes that are sold in millions of stores around the world to be made transparently, responsibly, and safely, and for freedom of association and collective bargaining rights to be respected.
Industrial has global agreements with corporations such as Ford, H&M, BMW, Petrobras, Volkswagen, Renault, and Inditex. And that's it. International labor news you can use. I'm Mark Boulanger. Thank you for listening. And remember, it's all about global solidarity.
From United Nations headquarters in New York, this is your World in 2 Minutes. I'm your host, Luke Vargas, for Talk Media News. 2 days of direct talks between North and South Korea have yielded surprising results, with the two countries agreeing to create a direct hotline between their presidents and pledging to meet face-to-face again next month. Though the details remain scarce, the stage is being set for face-to-face meetings between North Korean Supreme Leader Kim Jong-un and South Korean President Moon Jae-in at the DMZ. And for the first time, South Korea says its neighbor is willing to consider dismantling its nuclear program if the U.S. moves first and takes any military threats to the regime out of the picture. While top U.S. officials have hinted at their openness to directly negotiating with North Korea, they've repeatedly made it clear the U.S. won't scale back its deployment on the Korean peninsula. That alone may be enough to write off the possibility of direct talks involving the U.S., though President Trump hasn't said one way or the other whether he'll send an envoy to next month's negotiations. And it's AIPAC week in Washington as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu huddles with President Trump, congressional leaders, and attendees at the largest yearly gathering dedicated to the U.S.-Israeli alliance. In remarks Tuesday, Netanyahu told AIPAC he was committed to a peace plan being advanced by the U.S., though he implied it was Palestine holding up any prospects for peace.
To get peace, President Abbas has to embrace peace and to stop supporting terror.
U.S. Ambassador to Israel David Friedman seemed to echo that sentiment, brushing off criticism the Trump peace plan was in disarray and saying Israel still needed time to build up its security instead of being rushed toward a two-state solution.
We all know what King David, the great warrior poet, meant by his request. We will have peace, but first we must be strong.
For more global news headlines, visit talkmedianews.com.
Thank you for accompanying us to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. It is Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. That is our daily special, and we continue with a very special day indeed. So we are always starting off with a palate cleanser before the meatier subjects that we will be attending to at the chef's table. And that would be, the palate cleanser would be weather from around the world. And in English, that would be weather from around the world. Weather from around the world. And we always begin along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 35 degrees. The Weather Underground informs me that it even feels like 35 degrees. I went outside, and it felt like pretty close to 35 degrees. Yes, increasing chance of rain, in which we are expecting about 1/4 of an inch later on today. Winds are currently out of the east-southeast at a negligible 2 miles per hour, though we are under a active wind advisory, though I'm not on the valley floor, and that's where the gusts of about 70 miles per hour, with sustained winds around 20 to 30 miles per hour. That's stiff. So, but we're not going to get that. We may get gusts where I am at of maybe 30 miles or more, but not the sustained winds. So if you're driving along I-5, between Redding and Grants Pass, well, at least Medford, take care. Don't have a high-profile vehicle, you truckers. You might find it turns into a sail. Okay, so tonight, rain will increase. And of course, I expect a high, they say, of 67. It could be. Low tonight of 41, though I think it will probably dip into the mid-30s. Winds will continue. They will be at 5 to 10 miles out of the east-southeast. And then, tonight, they'll be out of the south at about 5 to 10 miles per hour with gusts of around 30. Then tomorrow, we're expecting about 1 inch of rain. They call it showers here, so that would be that. Yes, it would be a torrential downpour anywhere else in the world, but here, well, except maybe Southeast Asia, they get some pretty good rain. Oh, yeah. And I might include India in that as well, during monsoon season. It just goes through that whole area there. And, and then we should dry out a little bit for a day, and then quite a few days of rain in our forecast. And that's good. Pressure has dropped a little bit to 29.99 inches. Visibility, they say 10 miles. I would take that down to 5 miles where I'm at. Humidity is at 73%, though that's got to be somewhere else, because I I'm registering a much higher humidity on my gauges here at the mothership of Netroots Radio. Okay, so weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people live around the world. London is 50 degrees and fair, as it should be. Piccadilly Circus. Paris is 48 with rain. Oh, how romantic. Rome is 50 degrees with rain, and they have a wind advisory too. Kiev is 33 degrees with a wintry mix. Kabul is 51 and clear, dangerously clear. Hong Kong is 65 and mostly cloudy. Tokyo is 42 with rain showers. Sydney, Australia is 67 and partly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 52 and cloudy. And New York is 36 degrees with a chilly, biting rain. And that is weather from around the world. Brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people live around the world. First offering here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Smothered Benedict Wednesdays is an article by E.A. Crunden out of Think Progress. Now, Europe, of course, was going to retaliate at even the hint of a trade war. And it looks like areas like Kentucky and Wisconsin are going to be impacted, and Republican lawmakers are not happy about it. Of course not. The European Union is preparing retaliatory tit-for-tat tariffs on a number of well-known U.S. brands and products in response to Trump's moves to impose tariffs on aluminum and steel imports from other countries. A list tallied by the EU indicates a 25% levy on multiple U.S. goods. The tariffs will impact upwards of 2.8 billion euros. That's $3.5 billion U.S., and that's going to include, in U.S. exports, that's going to include agricultural and steel products. Motorcycles and blue jeans are also among the items included. Well, I'm going to get khakis. Oh, no, they're going to be those too. Darn. Okay, the range of goods listed will disproportionately hit parts of the United States with strong manufacturing centers, including the Rust Belt and larger Midwest and Appalachia regions. Yep. No good deed that goes unturned. These tariffs right now are just talk, but they have the potential to become quite inflammatory and impact economic growth, Christina Hooper, chief global market strategist at Invesco, told Bloomberg Television. Tariffs beget more tariffs. It's like putting bacteria in a petri dish. Well, that's one way of putting it. Trump announced last week that he would seek to impose high tariffs on steel and aluminum of 25% and 10% respectively. Just numbers he pulled out of his, some people call it like out of his hat. I think it was some other place that he pulled it out of. But we're a morning show, for at least most of America. The threat sparked outcry from Canada, the top supplier of steel to the U.S., and led experts to worry a trade war might be imminent, to say nothing of the demise of NAFTA negotiation talks, which are ongoing. Well, wait a second. If they're the demise of them, it must be the last little twitches of life. Trump fired back, arguing on Twitter, because that's the only place he can, that trade wars are good and easy to win, while bemoaning U.S. deficits. This guy, I was going to say comic book, is not even to the level of the intellectual heights of comic books. This guy is mired in professional wrestling themes. Trade wars. Oh, God. All right. But Canada is not the only country the U.S. has to worry about. European countries expressed concern following Trump's announcement, with European automakers in particular urging Trump to reconsider. IMF and World Trade Organization officials criticized the decision, while a number of business leaders called for calm. Yeah, don't get this guy upset. He ran like a little boutique family business. Maybe he had a dozen people to deal with. He has no idea about economies of scale. Jesus. He only knows how to put his name on something. And even that's not very... I mean, did you see him chipping away his name in Panama? Now it seems Europe is moving forward with tit-for-tat retaliation tariffs seemingly targeted to impact U.S. businesses, and this is not lost on lawmakers, including members of Trump's own party. Bourbon from Majority Leader Mitch McConnell's state of Kentucky is among the products named. Many Harley-Davidson motorcycles, meanwhile, are assembled in Paul Ryan's home of Wisconsin. What a hog. In a statement released on Monday, prior to news of the EU retaliatory tariffs, Ryan criticized Trump's plans. We are extremely worried about the consequences of a trade war and are urging the White House not to advance with this plan, a spokesperson for the speaker said in a statement. The new tax reform law has boosted the economy, and we certainly don't want to jeopardize those gains. But Trump wasn't going to have any of it. He was in a peak, and he had to take it out on his party and all the people that brought him there. Or as Molly Ivins would say, brung him there. Because you only hurt the ones you love. Except he doesn't love anything or anyone. Otherwise, I mean, everything's for sale, right? If you love something, it's harder to sell it. What we're talking about is that you always hurt those who love you. That'll teach them. Okay. Senate Majority Whip John Cornyn of Texas said this is not a real estate transaction. While you could maybe walk away from a real estate transaction, we can't really walk away from these trade agreements without jeopardizing the economy. Okay. Republicans have reportedly been meeting with Trump in an effort to dissuade the president. We don't use the P word here. Dissuade Trump from moving forward with proposed tariffs. In the meantime, various industries are already taking a hit from the White House's economic rhetoric. Trump's repeated attacks on NAFTA are already impacting U.S. agriculture and farmers as Mexico turns away from the U.S. and towards a more appealing trade partner, Brazil. Because, there's a lot of rainforest to decimate and have a bunch of monocultures to bring down the rest of the world. Thank you very much. Jeez. See, we could have done the right thing, but we aren't. And, of course, they're not alone. Mining organizations have expressed concern that Trump's proposed steel tariffs could be bad for another industry that Trump has historically touted, coal. Well, maybe some good things have come out of it. Well, today, this is an update. Today, officials in Brussels confirmed that they had drawn up a list of items on which the EU planned to levy tariffs. Certain types of bourbon are on the list, as are other items such as peanut butter, cranberries, orange juice. All that we're going to have to pay more for. I'm going to have to grow some peanuts and grind them myself. Damn you. Very soon the list will be public, so you will be able to plan your whiskey drinking. Brussels Trade Commissioner Cecile Malmström snickered. The list itself is extensive and includes the items Malmström mentioned: bourbon, peanut butter, cranberries, orange juice, as well as dozens of other items. According to Politico, which obtained a copy of the list, the EU also plans to levy tariffs on items such as various types of steel, flat rod, steel rods, cast iron tubes and piping, door and window frames, scaffolding equipment, hardware, baking and cooking appliances, certain kinds of cotton clothing and footwear, lipstick, eye makeup, manicure and pedicure products, boats, motorcycles, canoes, yachts, as well as a range of agricultural products, including rice, kidney beans, sweet corns, among other things. Wow, we're making America great again.
Je te donne c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
Finishing up here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Smothered Benedict Wednesdays is, this is from Eric Bullard out of Share Blue Media. Now, my governor of Oregon here, Democratic Governor Kate Brown, is leading the way by standing up to the NRA. She signed the nation's first new gun bill law into law. The law bans anyone convicted of stalking or domestic violence or under restraining orders from buying or owning firearms and ammunition. The fine for unlawful possessions of guns and ammunitions is a $6,250 fine, 364 days in jail, or both. It closes a loophole in the 2015 law that included some abusers such as boyfriends who abuse partners they don't live with. Now those guys can't get a gun. Or women too. Most Republicans remain intransigent, as they always have been, of course. Not only on the national but state level. Though this was somewhat of a bipartisan agreement. Already, though, there is some pushback. A 20-year-old kid just down the hill from me here, or the mountain, depending on how you look at it, is taking Walmart and Dick's Sporting Goods to court for violating his rights to be able to buy a gun because he's too young now, according to these retailers. And he says that they are violating his constitutional right to be able to have a gun and, intimidate people with it. So there is that. But at least Governor Kate Brown has signed a bill into law that closes some loopholes, and it is a stand against the NRA. And with that, we have to finish up our broadcast period for the day. So stay tuned to the rest of the day to Netroots Radio. Always breaking news coming at you live and worldwide. And so we will visit with you tomorrow in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Coeur. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie d'un novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin l'âge tendre, nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver, dans mon jardin d'hiver.